What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the fourth ever episode of the Crossroads, a weekly financial show for our generation. I'm your host, Trayton DeVore, and I also got Thomas Kopelman over here. We are the co-founders of All Street Wealth. And in this episode, we're going to talk about net worth because it's one of the most important things to track as a young professional. And there are some common misconceptions about how accurate it is, what should all play into it. So we're just going to kind of break that down, why you should track it. And I think kind of just one of the first things to get out of the way is how do you calculate net worth? Like, what even is it? And the calculation's actually pretty simple. It's just your total assets minus your total liabilities. So everything you own minus everything you owe. And what you owe would be like credit card debt and just other debts like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good start because I think honestly, we have to go that foundational because some people don't even really know the difference between an asset and a liability. So an asset, you could be, your bank account, your savings account, your 401k, the equity you have in your home. And then on the liability side, you're more so looking at, you mentioned credit card debt, you have your mortgage, you have your car loan, your student loans. And really you just take a look at it. What are all the assets that you have minus what are all the liabilities you have? And that answers your net worth. For a lot of young professionals, though, I think that looking at their net worth is a little scary. Like, imagine that you are a doctor. You come out of med school, you've never really been able to earn money. You have $300,000 of student loans. Your net worth is looking pretty scary because it's this huge negative number. But what I always tell my clients when we go through this is that your net worth, the number that it tells you today doesn't matter. What we use for net worth is to measure progress. And so if you think about older people or retirees, yes, net worth matters, but a lot of what you look at there is like year over year, what is my investment growth? How has my portfolio changed? But for millennials, I think it's way different because you want to look at net worth. Like if it's your first year out of school, you started your Roth, you started your 401k, you might only have gained a net worth of a few $1,000s because it's such a small portfolio balance. But you might have paid down $50,000 of student loans and help pay down your car loan. And so you can see this massive progress by, both increasing your assets and also decreasing your liabilities.
Yeah, and that part of it's just so important because like you were saying, like when you're young and you just get started investing, like let's just say you're matching up to the 401k and you're maxing out your Roth IRA, like that may only be like 10, 15, 20,000 a year. So it's like that investment's not going to like be compounding for at least another 5, 10, 15 years. So you're not going to see a whole lot of growth out of just that aspect. But with our generation, like most people have student loans, like maybe a little credit card debt. And it's like, if you're investing, you're growing your net worth on that side and you're growing it by bringing down the other side, like what you owe. And I think one thing that isn't necessarily accurate with the net worth is when people include their home in the net worth calculation, because that's not liquid. Like, yeah, you own it, like it's an asset, but when you're talking about net worth growth, it's like, yeah, the market value might have gone up by like 200,000 in the past couple of years, but that's not really doing anything for you at the time because you would have to sell the house or get a HELOC or something like that to actually like see the benefit from that growth.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's a difference. There's liquid net worth and there's regular net worth. So in that regular net worth, you include your house. And it can be misleading. So I have clients who, maybe their net worth's $300,000. They go refinance their house. They figure out, wow, my house is worth $150,000 more dollars. And so their net worth is like went from 300 to 450 really quickly. But does that really make a big difference on how you're feeling? I don't know, but if you just look at liquid net worth, which is just kind of everything minus your house, that is where you can kind of see and feel that real growth over time, because it's a lot harder to move that net worth because it's literally just saving, investing, and paying down debt than hey, I refinanced my house and now it says it's worth this much, but that could just be for this short 6-month period because there's very little supply and high demand in the housing market. So I do think that's a really good point. I think for this though, I really just kind of want to harp on the fact that like net worth is a starting point for young people. Use it as a starting point, track it over time to make sure that you're doing the right things. And that's how you can truly see the progress that you're making.
For sure. And if you don't want to get out a piece of paper and write down like every single number, like there's apps out there that can help you track it. Like I still recommend at least writing it down so you can get it right the first time and kind of just see it, visualize it, think through everything. But there's things like I used to use Personal Capital, and you can link some of your accounts. You can like manually put in like your student loan debt amount or the value of your home, and can just kind of have like a digital historical record. Like it'll show you the past growth and everything like that. So if you don't want to do it manually, like there's definitely apps and softwares out there that can help with it too.
Yeah. And I would say definitely do track this though, because it's a really cool way to see your progress. Like I honestly had a client this year, they're in their early 30s, they're making really good money. They're maxing out their 401ks, maxing out backdoor Roth IRAs, HSAs, taxable, and their net worth went up by like 230,000 in 1 year. And for them, you get to sit down, you see what happened over that year. And it's really easy to keep going because you're seeing the progress that is being made. Then, oh, I hope this is working. I don't really know the impact necessarily it's making. It's easy to fall off track when you aren't, feeling the wins that happen by doing this.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's about all I had on that.
All right. So let's get into the reader questions for this week. So first one is, should you use credit cards or not? I think this is kind of like a hot topic, which in my mind, I see the value of like, hey, sometimes credit cards can lead to more spending. And I get the Dave Ramsey's of the world. You have the Dave Ramsey videos kind of arguing with some of those things, which everybody who's watching this should go watch because they're hilarious. But I mean, Trey, what do you think about credit cards? Do you use them? How do you use them? What do you think about them?
I religiously use my credit. Like every expense I have goes on a credit card except my rent, because
they'll charge extra.
Yeah, there would be like a 2 or 3% fee or something. Like I'm not getting enough cash back to make that worth it. So not doing that. But yeah, I put every single thing on a credit card. And the common complaint, I mean, there's several of them, but one of the biggest is that, oh, you're going to spend more on a credit card than you would cash. And for me, at least, like I feel like I spend cash way quicker than I spend it on a credit card, because I can see that number going up on my credit card. Like I use the Apple Card mostly. I also have the Discover It card, I think. But like the Apple Card, it's like built into your iPhone, so you can just click the wallet, see your total balance, make all your payments on there. And I just love it. Like you get 3% cash back on like Apple things, 2% if you use Apple Pay, and 1% if you swipe the card. And the card's aluminum, like it's super sick. I feel cool fancy with it.
Yeah, it's cool.
But yeah, like I personally love credit cards, and they're definitely not right for everyone. Like you can get in so much trouble with credit cards. Like the debt and the interest rates are insane. But if you have a good understanding of your spending, like you can use them without putting yourself in debt. Like they're a great tool. Like a blanket statement of credit cards are bad just isn't really accurate.
Yeah. I think it's funny too, because I definitely have clients and people I work with where, credit cards are not something we can use because they've had such a problem with it. And so it's like, well, let's get spending under control and then we can go back to using credit cards. But I'm the same way as you. Like if I have cash, I don't see that. Like the money I see in my checkings, my savings, all that, that's what I feel like I have money. So any cash I have is like not money I've counted in my head. So I'm like, oh, spend it here, spend it there. I'll buy the drinks. Like, I might as well go buy some clothes, which is so different than what the average person thinks. So I think that's funny. But I agree. I think credit cards can be used a good tool. You can have cash back. A lot of those things. I think a good strategy a lot of people use with credit cards is you have two. So you have one that you go use like, at the grocery store and do all of those things in person. And then you have one you use for online. And the reason why that's important is because it is more likely to have a hack or somebody, need a new card with your stuff online. And so then if you have this other card that is like subscriptions and then in-person stuff, well, then if something happens with that card, you're set. But that actually does bring up a good point of, if you have subscription fees that like you don't want to miss, you could put all of them on one card and only use it there to keep the risk really low, because there's nothing more annoying than like, oh, I got to go figure out my 10 subscriptions that just canceled and make sure I can get my card on it in time, so nothing bad was going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that also brings up another really good point is with credit cards, the money isn't coming directly out of your bank account like if you were using a debit card. So if something was to happen and a card got hacked or something and it was a debit card, which is directly tied to your bank account, that money's coming straight out of your bank account and it's gone. Like the bank is probably going to help with it, but credit card companies are a lot better with protection on fraud and things like that. One, because the money hasn't gone anywhere yet. Like it's just a charge on that statement. The money hasn't came out of your account. So there's a lot better chance that it's fixed without you having to pay anything if you're using a credit card over a debit card, for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm the same way. Like I don't even honestly ever use my debit card. I can't even think of the last time I did. But if you have $1,000 your checking account, somebody hacks your debit card, takes $100,000, like you're left with zero. You don't really have an option of what to do. Somebody spends $1,000 on your credit card, you call Chase, say, hey, that wasn't my purchase. They basically credit you back. They go look at it for about 5 days to a week. And usually they're like really good at handling it. So that safety feature is really big. I think that there is one part I want to add here. There are a lot of young people who are on their parents' cards. Nothing wrong with that. Some of the research says that it can help build your credit. Some people say, well, it doesn't always do that. But what I've seen happen with a couple of young people is, wow, my parents forgot I'm on their card. They put me on just one of their cards. That's their card that they use for everything. So their usage limit is like 90%. Their overall usage limit wouldn't be. It's just because it's that one card. And I've had people I've worked with where their credit has gone down 100 points because they're sitting at 90% usage all the time because their parents put them on that card. And so that is something that you want to be aware of is, one, the length of your credit history matters. Two, your credit usage matters. You want to try to keep it like 30% or below. And those two things are just really important. And obviously you want to have good payment history to help build your credit as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's to just kind of wrap that up. It's like, yeah, if you're paying it off every month and you're not going in debt with it, like there's no real negativity or negative aspect of using a credit card. Like you're just getting an advance on your spending. And if you pay it off at the end of the month, nothing bad's happening. You're not being charged interest just to use a credit card or anything like that. Like I'm a fan of them. Like they're definitely not right for everyone, but if you're able to control your spending and can pay it off every month, like use it, like 100% go for it.
Yeah. We did have one more question. We're going to skip it to next week because this one's went longer and I have another question for you. What do you think of 0% interest credit cards?
I mean, they're a great tool if used in the right situations. I didn't really understand them for the longest time up until a couple of years ago. I'm like, how can this just be 0% and you don't have to pay it every month? Like it just didn't really make sense to me. And I feel like a lot of people are in that same boat. But like if you had, like, one of the best use cases for it is if you do have credit card debt, you can Jesus you can roll it all into that, get that debt paid down, and still need to address the fact that you got in the credit card debt in the first place, because that 0% is not going to last forever.
Yeah.
But if used in the right way to pay off higher interest credit card debt, like they can be great for sure.
Yeah. So two things to add there. So I did go through this strategy one time with a client. Something to be aware of is a lot of them don't allow you to do a full balance. So one of my clients had 22,000 of credit card debt. His credit score wasn't high enough to make that transfer. And so they were only able to do some parts of it. So I think some people get in their idea like, well, if that happens, I'll just transfer to 0%, life will be good. But It's
Yeah.
not always that simple. For some people, it really is, but also a lot of times they charge you a fee for that transfer. It might be 2%, 3%, it might be, 5%, which can be a big difference. So just want to be aware that, you can do the transfer, but you also don't really want to get in the habit of like, 0% for 12 months and transfer the next 0% for 12 months. And then you're kind of just like always chasing it. Like, sure, numerically it could be okay, but we don't want to be running down the debt rabbit hole. But I do think like I have some other clients who are like, hey, we're going to go on a trip. It's going to be $10,000. I'm going to put on a zero interest credit card,
Yep.
pay it off over 12 months. And they have the habits to make that a good tool versus pay 8,000 now. And you can go through the whole mindset of like, well, if you invested money early, technically, a lot of times that's going to end up being better. Not that that's always a really good strategy to use, but 0% interest cards can be beneficial when used correctly, but you have to be organized. You have to stick to your plan. You have to pay it off because as soon as that 0% is over, you're going back to high interest and then you're back in a bad spot.
Exactly. Yeah. And kind of again, like I was saying, like if you're using it to pay off credit card debt, like older debt, that debt happened for a reason, and it just that spending problem needs to be addressed, or it's just gonna happen again, and
Yeah.
next year you'll have to get another 0% card to pay off the last one, and then it's just a never ending loop of trying to get out of debt. So
So,
it can
so
be a
basically,
great tool, but still need to address kind of the underlying cause of the debt in the first place.
exactly. So, like one side of the equation, it's a helpful tool. The other side of the equation, it's kind of like masking the problem, and you have to get to the root of it and solve it. And if you do that, then it becomes a good use. But if you just mask it and then stay in that cycle, then you're really not helping yourself out too much.
Exactly.
So, all right, well, cool. I think that was everything that we wanted to talk about today. Thanks again for everybody for watching and listening. Subscribe to the channel and leave us a review. See you guys back next week.